This is the Sony ZV-E1. Where does Sony keep coming up with these names? Sony ZV-E1, that's a weird one. I'm okay with like the A7S, A7R, A6000. Like, why couldn't they just call this an A7S III Mini? Because essentially that's what this thing is. This is what a kitted out Sony A7 IV looks like. The body is a pretty similar size to the A7S III, and look at the fucking difference of that. That is actually insane. But honestly, from a run and gun perspective, this combo, the Sony ZV-E1 and the new Sony 16 to 35 millimeter, this might just be the best run and gun vlogging setup out right now. Now, before we take this thing out, I want to be clear that this isn't the cheapest. This isn't the best beginner. This isn't the best entry level. This isn't the best camera setup that you can buy at this price point. I'm talking the best content creator run and gun vlogging camera setup. Compact, shoots everything that a Sony A7S III would with like a fraction of the size. It weighs nothing compared to something like this. Sure, you lose out on an f2.8, but you still get the 35 millimeter focal length, so that way you can create that bokeh with some distance. No viewfinder, it's only got one SD card slot. I mean, you throw it on the 3K Gorilla Pod, and this is it. This is the vlog setup. Good internal mic, and one huge benefit to this is it has AI built into it, so you get better stabilization. You get this really dope feature when it comes to the microphone, to where if you're not using an external mic, it will automatically pick up if you are behind it or in front of it. But enough talking about it, let's go out and use it, shall we? Now, obviously you guys will notice that the audio doesn't sound as good as what it just sounded like a second ago. Reason being is because I'm using a much higher end microphone setup for that. So in comparison to a nearly $5,000 setup, it's gonna be a little different. Ready to do a little house shopping, dude?
Yeah.
So I've had this camera for a few months. What have been a couple things that you've liked about this since I've gotten it?
Where the record button is and the size of it. Being able to hold it for longer and my arms not get tired.
So I think setting up any camera in like a studio, a lit environment, using an external mic, can make the camera look good. A big thing that I really like about this is the sheer fact that I don't have to have a big bulky mic, and the internal mic does the job. Is it the best thing in the world? No, like we're not talking about a movie set here. We're talking about a vlog for YouTube. And in all honesty, coming straight from the camera with the windows rolled down and the sunroof open, this doesn't sound that bad. Watch, I actually review it back and it's like complete.
Sounds terrible. I was thinking that. You're like, wow, this audio sounds great. And I'm like, you don't know that though. You're just really hoping that.
Well, like I've recorded like this before, yeah. So like and nobody in the videos has like bitched about it. Again, it's like not gonna sound exactly like everything else. It's not gonna have that sustenance, but is it gonna sound better than a peaking, you know, cell phone camera or something that all you hear is, you know what I mean? Yeah, like I feel like this does a pretty good job at picking up the noises and balancing everything. And this is like worst case sound. We're in a fucking truck with the windows down. If it even sounds remotely good or people can hear it, then I don't think there's any reason to bitch. Like the whole point of this is like, this is probably one of the best run and gun vlogging cameras that there is out there right now. Now, a couple of the other features. Number one, you're looking at the insanely good image stabilization right now. So this is the highest image stabilization that this camera has to offer. It does crop in a little bit, but as you can see, like we're moving right now in a vehicle and you can just see how balanced this thing is, man. I honestly can't believe how smooth it looks. Like I remember years ago having to use a $700 gimbal to get like the shot that I'm getting right now. But the only difference is I was like holding 30 pounds in my hand. On top of that, you have 4K 120 FPS, so you can get that cinematic slow motion. It does have this pretty dope feature where it adds cinematic bars and changes the color to S-Cinetone, so that way straight out of the camera you can get like really cinematic movie looking shots. To be honest, I thought I would use this a lot more, but I really don't use this ever. Holy shit!
I was just like, Oh.
Dude, we just seen the craziest. That's actually what we're doing right now, is we're going to go drive past a potential house. Kind of interested in moving out of the area that we're in right now. We're not like seriously looking. I think we're kind of like outgrowing, not necessarily our house, but our community. You know, we're really on top of each other. We want a little bit more space. We want privacy. We want land. So we're kind of browsing around. Nothing crazy. But another dope feature that this camera has that I personally like is the S&Q mode also involves time lapse. Now, I don't remember if my A7S III S&Q mode had time lapse on there. If it does, then I guess I'm just saying a redundant feature. But I feel like ever since Casey and Neistat, like, time lapse have been so clutch for kind of showing a process of a moment from like one scene to the next, by having the time lapse in there, as you've seen from the start of the video today. Just another cool little tool that goes into the camera to make it that more convenient for vlogging, for like that run and gun vlogging. You flip a switch, you get this cool thing that makes your job easier, less shit that you have to do in post, right? Which I think is like the point of why this thing is so great. It does everything and it does it good, honestly. Like, I wouldn't say like it's got the best sensor out of all the cameras. I wouldn't say it's got the best photography, the best video, the best, I mean, maybe the best stabilization. I don't know. Definitely the best AI. I don't know. It's definitely not the best camera, like better than all the other cameras, but specifically for vlogging. It's just like, it's like perfectly built for it. So nothing is set in stone, but man, like this is what I'm talking about. Like, look at this. This is privacy. I don't know if you guys have seen much of our current house, but it is on top. Look, a little. You don't really have. We can get a little nook down here, dude. Oh my God, Megan and I both grew up with decks, front porches and decks. There's nothing better than watching a storm roll in and sitting on the front deck. Mama E would be having a big old iced tea. Papa E would be having a Bud Light. How much? Man, look at all that property down there. It looks cool. That's the big thing with like our current house too, is it's like, it's very cookie cutter. Very plain Jane, very boring. We moved into a community that they pump out these houses. This right here, back deck with a fan. That's the big thing. Like the overhang already being here. So much more room for activities. Now I would like to point out that I'm using a pretty specific lens. It's not cheap. So some people would have to opt for a different lens option. Honestly, I think a Tamron 6 or 17 to 28. I think that Tamron f2.8 lens probably wouldn't be that much bigger, maybe a little longer, and definitely not as heavy. I just wanted this lens because it's a little smaller. It's got good stabilization. As you see, the 35 can still create some sense of background blur, and I do like the digital zoom, but obviously the lens would be up to you guys. Okay, so final thoughts. A7S III sensor, low light, quality, perks plus more in a tiny little compact body. When I went and visited Jayhawk, I had the opportunity to take this to Chicago as well and test out the photo portions of that. As you can see, the 12 megapixel sensor is completely fine for photography. Are you going to be using something like this to blow up billboards in Times Square? Probably not. Are most people buying fucking cameras in 2023 taking photography for that? No, let's be honest. And sorry if I sound so shitty about that. I could just feel the comments already brewing of the individuals that just posts Instagram photos saying that 12 megapixels isn't enough for a camera. Shut the hell up, man. But anyways, I've been using this for the past few months for vlogging, for vertical stuff, for run and gun, for an extra stream camera, for an extra overall shooting camera. I've yet to hear one single person say, hey, are you using any less quality of a camera? Because I can clearly tell a difference. So if you are a creator, a creative, a brand, an entrepreneur that's looking to step up your content creating game in some way, you want it to be convenient, you want it to be minimal, you don't want to have this big bulky thing. You want to be able to go out in public and just make it convenient to self-record or to record anything else. I can't recommend the ZV-E1 enough. If you're just beginning, I wouldn't recommend this camera. It's a little pricey to start off with, and there's a lot of other camera options to save a shit ton of money to kind of figure out what you need to learn with these cameras. But it's just insane to think about. Just a few years ago, like, we were waiting on Sony to get rotating screens. Getting cameras of this size to have 4K 120 FPS. Like this camera, the Sony a7 IV, this doesn't even have that capability. Like it cannot shoot 4K 120 FPS. Doesn't have AI, doesn't have a lot of the things that the Sony ZV-E1 has. And now we have that technology in this little guy. Pretty sick if you think about it. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. I'm out, peace, deuces.